Chapter 2. The Ruthless Billionaire. The salt spray kissed Isabella's face as the dragon's breath sliced through the waves. Days blurred into a hypnotic rhythm of ocean and sky, punctuated only by the ship's rhythmic creak and the chatter of the crew. Yet beneath the surface calm, a storm brewed. Isabella knew, with a chilling certainty, that she wasn't the only one racing towards the lost island of Arden. Lucian Thorne's shadow stretched long and dark across her path. She'd learned about Victor Martel through Professor Finch, a clandestine whisper in the halls of academia, a shadowy figure who moved in circles far removed from the dusty tomes and scholarly debates that dominated Finch's world. Martel, it turned out, was more than just a wealthy eccentric with a penchant for obscure historical artifacts. He was a ruthless billionaire, his wealth built on a foundation of morally questionable ventures, ranging from ethically dubious resource extraction to controversial technological advancements. His fascination with the occult, however, was no mere hobby. It was a driving force, a consuming passion that bordered on obsession. Finch had stumbled upon Martel's name through a tangled web of encrypted communications and seemingly unrelated research projects. Martel, it seemed, had been independently researching the Arden dynasty for years, piecing together fragments of information from scattered sources. His network of informants and his virtually unlimited resources allowed him to penetrate circles that remained closed to even the most seasoned academics. He had unearthed maps, deciphered ancient texts, and even acquired artifacts that corroborated the existence of the island and its connection to the dragons. Unlike Isabella, Martel wasn't driven by a sense of familial obligation or a desire to preserve a lost civilization. His motives were far more sinister. He wasn't interested in understanding the dragons. He sought to control them. The ancient text spoke of the dragon's immense power, a power that Martel intended to harness for his own nefarious ends. His ambitions weren't limited to personal gain. He envisioned global domination, using the dragons as instruments of conquest and control. The chilling details that Finch had uncovered painted a portrait of a man devoid of empathy, a ruthless pragmatist who viewed the world as a chessboard, with people as pawns to be manipulated and discarded as needed. Martel possessed a private army, a shadowy organization comprised of highly trained mercenaries and specialists in unconventional warfare. He wasn't afraid to use force, to intimidate, or to eliminate anyone who stood in his way. The thought of Martel reaching the island first sent a shiver down Isabella's spine. She pictured him, a silhouette against the backdrop of the ancient Arden castle, commanding the dragons with an iron fist, twisting their power for his own ends. The image was a stark contrast to her own vision of a harmonious coexistence, a symbiotic relationship built on mutual respect and understanding. Martel's presence represented a catastrophic threat, not only to the dragons but to the entire world. His ambition knew no bounds, his morality non-existent. He represented a darkness that threatened to engulf everything she held dear. The urgency of the situation spurred Isabella into action. She convened a meeting with her crew, sharing the information about Martel and outlining the potential consequences of his success. Her crew, a diverse group of experts selected for their specific skills and unwavering loyalty, listened intently, their faces reflecting a mixture of apprehension and determination. They understood the gravity of the situation, the enormity of the task ahead. They were no longer just on a scientific expedition, they were on a mission to prevent a global catastrophe. Isabella's strategy involved a two-pronged approach. Firstly, they needed to reach the island as quickly as possible, securing the ancient castle and the surrounding area before Martel could establish a foothold. This required meticulous planning, precise navigation, and a willingness to take calculated risks. Secondly, they needed to develop a strategy to counter Martel's forces. This involved understanding his capabilities, anticipating his movements, and formulating a plan to neutralize his threat. It was a daunting task, but Isabella was determined to succeed. She delegated specific tasks to her team, leveraging their expertise to maximize their efficiency. The navigator meticulously charted their course, taking into account currents, weather patterns, and potential hazards. The communications specialist ensured their link to the outside world remained secure, providing vital updates and intelligence. The security team, comprised of former Special Forces operatives, meticulously reviewed their weaponry and tactics, preparing for potential confrontations. Meanwhile, Isabella herself focused on preparing for her interaction with the dragons, studying the ancient texts and practicing the techniques of communication detailed within them. The voyage was fraught with tension. Each passing day was a race against time, a relentless pursuit towards an uncertain future. Isabella found herself increasingly relying on the mindfulness techniques she'd learned. The weight of responsibility, the looming threat of Martell, and the uncertainty of the future created an immense pressure, but she refused to let it overwhelm her. She practiced deep breathing, centering herself in the present moment, focusing on the task at hand. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, land appeared on the horizon. A jagged silhouette against the backdrop of the setting sun, the island of Arden rose from the ocean, a majestic sentinel guarding its ancient secrets. As the dragon's breath approached the shore, Isabella felt a surge of anticipation, a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The journey had been perilous, but it was nothing compared to the challenges that lay ahead. The battle for Arden, the battle for the dragons, the battle for the fate of the world was about to begin, and Victor Martel, the ruthless billionaire, was waiting. The air crackled with unspoken power, a palpable tension that mirrored the clash of wills about to unfold on the shores of a forgotten island. The dragons and their destiny lay in the balance. Martel's private army. The air in the obsidian-walled command center hung thick with anticipation. Rows of monitors flickered, displaying satellite imagery of the dragon's breath and its erratic course. A deliberate ploy, Martel knew, to mask their true intentions. He stood, a silhouette against the panoramic window overlooking the storm-tossed ocean, his tailored suit immaculate despite the tension radiating from the room. Victor Martel, a man who built empires from the ashes of others' failures, felt a thrill course through him. Arden was within his grasp. His private army, a meticulously assembled force unlike any other, stood ready. It wasn't merely a collection of mercenaries. It was a symphony of specialized skills, a blend of cutting-edge technology and forgotten lore, all orchestrated to achieve a single terrifying objective: the subjugation of the dragons. Colonel Vargas, a former Special Forces operative whose ruthlessness was matched only by his tactical brilliance, stood to Martel's right. His face, etched with the map of countless battles, betrayed no emotion, only a cold, professional dedication to the mission. He reported on the Army's readiness with a crisp efficiency that was both impressive and chilling. "All units are operational, sir. The transport vessels are prepared for immediate deployment." The extraction team, equipped with the Chronos disruptors, is ready to secure the landing zone. The Chronos disruptors, one of Martel's many technological marvels, were designed to temporarily neutralize the dragon's temporal abilities, an ancient, rarely understood power that allowed them to manipulate time on a localized scale. Martel had invested years and untold resources in developing this technology, a testament to his relentless ambition. It was a critical component of his strategy, designed to negate the dragon's most potent defensive capabilities. To his left stood Dr. Anya Petrova, a woman whose expertise in ancient languages and arcane rituals was unparalleled. Her pale face, framed by raven-black hair, held an intensity that hinted at the dark knowledge she possessed. She was Martel's key to understanding the ancient texts that spoke of the dragon's weaknesses and the secrets of Arden. "The eclipse ritual is within our reach, sir," she stated, her voice low and measured. "The necessary artifacts have been secured and are awaiting transport." The eclipse ritual, according to ancient texts, was the key to controlling the dragons. By harnessing the power of the eclipse, a descendant of the Arden dynasty could claim dominion over the creatures. Martel, however, had no interest in lineage or legitimacy. He aimed to manipulate the ritual, twisting it to his own nefarious purposes. He intended to use it as a tool, a means to an end, disregarding the ancient traditions and sacrificing anything that stood in his way. Beyond Vargas and Petrova, the room buzzed with activity. Technicians monitored the progress of the expedition, while specialists prepared advanced weaponry and other instruments of control. The air crackled with the subtle hum of advanced technology, a stark contrast to the hushed reverence that surrounded the ancient artifacts displayed on raised platforms. These artifacts, some dating back millennia, were not mere museum pieces. They were integral parts of Martel's strategy, imbued with a power that resonated with the dark magic of his plans. One such artifact, a serpentine amulet pulsating with an eerie green glow, was particularly significant. Recovered from a long-lost crypt in the Andes Mountains, it was believed to amplify the wearer's psychic abilities, allowing for a more potent connection with the dragons. This amulet, along with several other potent magical relics, would be given to Martel's chosen emissaries, highly trained individuals capable of wielding both ancient power and modern weaponry. Among Martel's most valuable assets were the Shadow Syndicate, a group of operatives possessing enhanced abilities bordering on the supernatural. Each member had been painstakingly selected and rigorously trained, their minds honed to a razor's edge, their physical capabilities augmented beyond the limits of normal human endurance. They were the elite of his army, the silent blades that would strike from the shadows, capable of infiltrating defenses and dealing swift, decisive blows. Their leader, a shadowy figure known only as Nightshade, was an enigma, a master of stealth and deception whose origins and true capabilities remained shrouded in mystery. Nightshade reported directly to Martel, their communication encrypted and their missions shrouded in secrecy. Even Vargas and Petrova knew little of the syndicate's operations, a testament to the level of trust, or perhaps fear, that Martel inspired. As the countdown continued, Martel felt a wave of satisfaction. Years of meticulous planning, countless resources expended, and a trail of broken lives paved the way for this moment. He had meticulously crafted his army, a force capable of conquering any obstacle. His ambition, cold and calculating, burned like a supernova. He was about to claim the dragons, their power, and their island, and nothing, not even the fierce resistance of a young woman, would stand in his way. He adjusted his cufflinks, a subtle gesture betraying the excitement simmering beneath his impassive exterior. The game was about to begin, and he was confident of victory. The conquest of Arden and the subsequent domination of the world was within his grasp. The final pieces were in place. The dragons would soon be his. Isabella's capture. The salt spray stung Isabella's face as the Serafina, her small research vessel, pitched violently in the churning waves. The storm, which had seemed a capricious act of nature just hours ago, now felt like a malevolent entity, determined to thwart her journey. She clung to the railing, her knuckles white, the wind whipping her hair across her face, obscuring her vision. The island, Arden, was tantalizingly close, a smudge of dark green against the tempestuous gray horizon, but the sea refused to yield its passage easily. Suddenly, a guttural roar ripped through the storm's fury. It wasn't the sound of the wind or the waves. It was a sound that vibrated deep within her bones, a sound that spoke of power, of ancient might. Then, twin beams of blinding light sliced through the darkness, followed by the unmistakable thrum of powerful engines. Two sleek black vessels, menacing silhouettes against the churning sea, emerged from the storm, flanking the Serafina. Isabella's heart plummeted. This was no ordinary storm. This was an ambush. Before she could react, grappling hooks shot out, snagging the Serafina's sides. Men clad in black tactical gear swarmed across the decks, their movements efficient and brutal. They moved with a precision that spoke of extensive training, their weapons glinting menacingly in the lightning flashes. Isabella, armed only with her wits and the ancient diary clutched tightly in her hand, was hopelessly outmatched. The fight was short, brutal, and one-sided. She fought with a desperation born of fear and determination, but against the overwhelming force, her resistance was futile. Overpowered and disoriented, she found herself roughly subdued, her hands bound behind her back, the diary snatched from her grasp. The last thing she saw before darkness swallowed her was the chillingly calm face of a man in a sharp black suit, watching her from the deck of one of the attacking vessels, Martel. The interrogation took place in a sterile, windowless room, the harsh fluorescent lights casting long, distorted shadows. Isabella was thrown onto a cold metal chair, her body aching, her head throbbing. The diary, now lying open on a table before her, seemed to mock her helplessness. Martel, impeccably dressed as always, sat across from her, his expression a mask of cold calculation. "So, Miss Langley," Martel began, his voice a low, smooth baritone that belied the ruthlessness in his eyes, "you possess an artifact of considerable historical significance, an artifact that holds the key to unlocking unimaginable power." Isabella remained silent, her gaze unwavering. She knew that any slip, any crack in her resolve could have catastrophic consequences. Martel's power and resources were vast. Her life was worth nothing compared to the secrets she held. "The diary speaks of Arden, of dragons, of an eclipse ritual," Martel continued, his fingers tracing the elegant script of her ancestors' handwriting. "Tell me, Miss Langley, what is the ritual, and where is the castle?" Isabella refused to speak. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the rhythmic ticking of a clock on the wall, a sound that seemed to amplify the tension in the room. Martel, however, was a patient man. He had all the time in the world. The torture began subtly. A low hum filled the room, a vibration that resonated deep within her bones, slowly increasing in intensity. It wasn't physically painful, at least not initially. It was more of a psychological attack, a relentless assault on her senses designed to break her will. The hum gradually intensified, twisting and distorting the sounds around her until her entire being was a symphony of agonizing dissonance. Then came the sleep deprivation. Days bled into nights, the boundaries blurring into an indistinguishable expanse of fatigue and despair. She was kept awake by the constant drone of machines, by the insistent questioning that never ceased, by the relentless cold gaze of Martel, a presence that seemed to invade every aspect of her existence. Her body screamed for rest, for respite, but her mind held firm. The location of the dragon castle was a secret she would take to her grave. As the torture intensified, so did Martel's tactics. He deployed psychological manipulation, playing on her fears, her insecurities, attempting to exploit her sense of isolation and desperation. He taunted her with veiled threats, suggesting harm to people she cared about, to people who might be unaware of her quest. The line between reality and hallucination blurred as her resilience faltered under the pressure. Through it all, she clung to the memory of the diary, to the legacy of her ancestors, to the duty she felt towards the dragons. They had chosen her, and she would not betray them. She found strength in the knowledge that her ancestors had faced worse than this and had persevered, protecting the secrets that laid with them for generations. She thought of the majestic winged creatures, their scales shimmering like jewels, their eyes ancient and wise. She drew upon their strength. The image of the ancient castle, rising majestically from the heart of Arden, fueled her will to resist. However, the physical torture eventually began to take its toll. Her body, weakened and broken, started to succumb to the relentless assault. Days turned into weeks, and the line between sanity and madness became increasingly thin. The constant light, the constant questioning, the lack of sleep, and the intense emotional and mental manipulation pushed her to the very limits of her endurance. But even as her physical strength waned, her resolve remained unbroken. One night, Martel decided to change tactics. He offered her a deal. He promised her safety, even freedom, in exchange for the information he craved. He painted a picture of a world where she would be safe from his wrath, a world where the dragons could be protected, not from him, but with him. He portrayed a vision of collaboration, of shared power. He spoke of a future where her legacy would be safe and celebrated. He presented a plausible compromise that gave her a small shred of hope, the hope that he might be offering her a way to safeguard the dragons from his wrath while securing her own safety. She knew it was a lie, a cruel manipulation designed to weaken her resolve. However, in the depths of her physical and emotional exhaustion, the allure of such a compromise was too tempting to immediately dismiss. The prolonged torture had broken her down physically, but her spirit remained defiant. She was close to the edge, but she still held on to her moral compass. Martel, sensing her hesitation, pressed his advantage. He spoke of the power he could wield, the influence he could exert, his ability to shape the future of the world. He suggested that, by working with him, she could help to guide that power toward a benevolent, if somewhat controlled, outcome. It was a dangerous game of manipulation, but Martel was a master of it. He offered her a choice: cooperation or continued suffering. The choice between saving the dragons by collaborating with him or facing the ever-increasing torture. But even as she considered his offer, she recalled the ancient stories, the legends of her ancestors' resistance, their unwavering dedication to protecting Arden and its inhabitants. The thought of betraying their legacy, of compromising her principles for her own survival, was unbearable. She could not surrender to the allure of a false hope. The weight of her ancestors, struggles and sacrifices pressed upon her, reaffirming her resolve. With a strength she didn't know she possessed, Isabella met Martel's gaze, her eyes burning with a defiant fire. Martel, speechless and utterly terrified, watched the scene unfold, his carefully crafted persona crumbling before the overwhelming power of the dragons. His face, usually an impassive mask, now displayed a mixture of fear, disbelief, and something closely resembling despair. He was reduced to a mere observer, his ambitions, his plans, his vast resources rendered utterly insignificant in the face of this ancient, untamable power. The dragons, sensing Martel's fear and the threat he posed, reacted instantaneously. Their eyes blazed, and a wave of raw magical energy surged from them, slamming into Martel with the force of a physical blow. He screamed, collapsing to the floor, his body convulsing, his sharp suit now torn and stained with the sweat of pure terror. The dragons paid him no further attention. Their focus remained entirely on Isabella. The lead dragon, the twilight-hued behemoth, lowered its massive head, its eyes filled with a curious mixture of affection and respect. It nudged Isabella gently with its snout, a gesture that felt strangely comforting, almost maternal. The dragon's presence was no longer simply a display of power. It was a reassurance, a promise, a welcoming back to a lineage that had been lost for centuries. The dragon's arrival was not merely an awakening, it was a validation, a confirmation of the family secret Isabella had stumbled upon. A legacy she had been unwittingly tasked with fulfilling. The ancient scrolls mentioned in the diary, the eclipse ritual, the potential for a dragon queen to emerge and command the power of these majestic beings, was not just a fairy tale. It was real. And now it was her reality. The dragons didn't just acknowledge her, they accepted her. They recognized her bloodline, her connection to their ancient lineage, her role as the rightful heir to their throne. This wasn't a fight she would face alone. She had an army of formidable power, an army of legend at her command. The light from the dragons gradually dimmed, their forms slowly fading from view, leaving behind only a lingering sense of awe and a renewed sense of purpose in Isabella's heart. The echoes of their voices lingered in her mind. Martel, still crumpled on the floor, whimpered, the broken remnants of his ambitions scattered around him. He was no longer a threat, a master of manipulation, but a pitiful, frightened man, reduced to insignificance by the sheer weight of ancient power. The silence that followed was profound, heavy with the residual energy of the dragon's presence. Isabella slowly rose from her chair, her body surprisingly invigorated. The aches and pains of the torture were gone, replaced by a newfound strength, a renewed vitality. The dragon's energy had not only healed her physically, it had revitalized her spirit. She looked down at Martel, a flicker of pity momentarily eclipsing her righteous anger. He had pursued power ruthlessly, driven by an ambition that had blinded him to the true weight of the forces he was attempting to control. His failure was a testament to the inherent imbalance of attempting to manipulate a power that far exceeded his comprehension. Isabella didn't need to speak. The dragon's message was clear. Arden, the ancient castle, the eclipse ritual, all of these were now within her reach. The fate of the dragons, the fate of the world, rested in her hands. And she, the reluctant heir, the 21st century woman thrust into an ancient destiny, was ready to accept the challenge. The game had changed, and she was winning. The ruthless billionaire had underestimated the power of a queen returning home. The awakening of the dragons was only the beginning. The dragon's sanctuary. The dragon's departure left behind a silence thick with residual magic, a tangible hum that vibrated in Isabella's bones. Martel, still sprawled on the floor, whimpered, a pathetic counterpoint to the echoing power that had just filled the room. His carefully constructed world, his empire of wealth and influence, had been shattered by a force far beyond his comprehension. He was a broken man, his ambitions reduced to dust. Isabella, however, felt anything but broken. The dragon's energy had not only healed her physical wounds, but had ignited a fire within her, a fierce determination that burned brighter than any fear. She felt a surge of power, a connection to something ancient and profound, a kinship with beings that had existed for millennia. The pain was gone, replaced by a clear-headed focus, a burning resolve. The dragon's telepathic message had resonated not just in her mind, but in her very soul. The queen had returned, and with that return, a path had been revealed, a path to Arden. The information gleaned from her grandmother's diary, previously cryptic and fragmented, now formed a cohesive whole. She recalled the passage describing Arden, not as a mere castle, but as a living entity, imbued with the same ancient magic that flowed through the dragons themselves. It was a fortress woven into the very fabric of the island, hidden within the treacherous volcanic landscape, its location guarded by centuries of silence and mystery. The diary spoke of a labyrinthine path, a treacherous journey through fire-scorched earth and treacherous chasms. It described hidden passages and ancient wards, designed to protect the castle from intruders, to keep its secrets safe from the prying eyes of the unworthy. The passage spoke of the eclipse ritual, a ceremony involving the dragon's bloodline and the celestial alignment of a specific lunar eclipse. It was said that performing this ritual would give the Dragon Queen unparalleled dominion over the dragons themselves. Martel's capture, brutal as it was, had inadvertently served a purpose. His obsession with the dragons, his relentless pursuit of power, had unwittingly drawn Isabella into the heart of their world. He had been a catalyst, a necessary evil in the grand scheme of her destiny. The air, still charged with magical energy, seemed to guide her. She felt a pull, an invisible thread connecting her to Arden, to her destiny. She walked towards the wall where the dragons had appeared, her hand tracing the cool metallic surface. The air shimmered faintly, and then, as if by magic, a portion of the wall dissolved, revealing a hidden passage. The passage descended into the bowels of Martel's facility, a labyrinthine network of corridors and tunnels that seemed to stretch endlessly into the earth. The air grew warmer, the scent of sulfur becoming increasingly pungent. The walls, once pristine and metallic, now bore the signs of age, their surfaces rough and textured, the stone raw and unpolished. Isabella moved with a newfound confidence, an inner strength that guided her through the twisting passages. Her senses sharpened, noticing details she had missed in her earlier, terror-filled state. She followed the whispers of the magic, the subtle shifts in temperature and atmosphere, the faintest of glows in the deepest recesses of the passages. The journey was not without its challenges. She navigated through pressure-sensitive plates that triggered alarms, bypassed laser grids with practiced ease, and evaded pressure-sensitive floors that led to hidden pits and traps. She was amazed how easily she intuited these challenges and avoided them, as if she already knew the ways. She encountered abandoned rooms, filled with the detritus of Martel's research, stacks of ancient texts and half-finished schematics for weapons she couldn't even begin to understand. The deeper she went, the more the volcanic landscape asserted its presence. The air grew thick with the smell of sulfur and ash, the temperature rising steadily. She could hear the rumble of the earth beneath her feet, a constant reminder of the raw power of the island. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she emerged into a vast cavern. Before her, bathed in the ethereal glow of the volcanic vents, stood Arden. It wasn't what she had expected. The diary had spoken of grandeur, of magnificence, of a fortress built by kings and queens. But Arden was more than that. It was a living testament to a lost age, a place where history and magic were indistinguishable, seamlessly intertwined. The castle was carved into the very rock face of the volcano, its structure a masterful blend of natural and architectural elements. Lava flowed in graceful streams down its outer walls, its molten brilliance illuminating the intricate carvings that decorated its stone facade. The stone itself seemed to pulse with an inner light, as if the very rock breathed with the life of the island. Ancient trees, their branches twisted and gnarled, clung to the castle's exterior, their roots snaking through the lava streams, creating an ethereal harmony between nature's raw power and the intricate artistry of the ancient builders. The air hummed with a powerful energy, a vibrant tapestry of magic that resonated deep within Isabella. The entrance was a massive archway, carved from obsidian, its surface etched with ancient glyphs that pulsed faintly with light. As Isabella approached, the obsidian softened, revealing a hidden mechanism, a series of levers and gears that opened the archway with a low, resonant groan. The entrance led to a vast courtyard, filled with the ghosts of centuries past. The courtyard itself was a testament to the power and artistry of Isabella's ancestors. A central fountain carved from a single piece of amethyst pulsed with a slow, rhythmic heartbeat. Statues of dragons, their forms sculpted with breathtaking realism, stood sentinel around the perimeter, their eyes seeming to follow Isabella's every move. In the center of the courtyard, under the watchful gaze of the dragon statues, stood a single ancient tree. Its trunk thick as a mountain, its branches reaching skyward like the arms of a supplicant. Its leaves, a deep emerald green, glowed with an internal light, and as Isabella drew closer, she felt a deep resonance in her soul, a feeling of kinship and belonging that went beyond simple recognition. This was home. This was Arden, and it was the place where her destiny would be fulfilled. The ruthless billionaire's plans for global domination, his brutal attempts to control the dragons, were meaningless here. A tempest in a teapot compared to the ancient enduring power that resided within the walls of this volcanic fortress. Isabella felt her strength renewed, her purpose solidified. The game was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The battle for the fate of the world, for the survival of the dragons, for the legacy of her family, was about to commence. And she, the reluctant queen, stood ready. Stay tuned for Chapter 3. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like the video.